Mr. President, I rise today in opposition to the budget resolution offered by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. This budget charts the wrong path for our nation. It doesn't spur economic growth or help the middle class because it doesn't focus on creating high-quality jobs, boosting wages, or reducing rising inequality. And it fails to address the cuts to the government investments that threaten our nation's economic and national security. Instead, this budget stacks the deck against middle-class families by slashing government investments, and it stacks the deck in favor of special interests by paving the way for huge tax giveaways to powerful special interests and the wealthiest Americans. And in order to claim the budget will balance in 10 years, it relies on accounting gimmicks and $5.8 trillion in draconian cuts. It kicks millions off of health insurance rolls and dismantles health care reform. But ironically, it takes credit for all the savings that are part and parcel of the Affordable Care Act, all the while setting the stage for massive tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. And it would also put powerful special interest ahead of seniors by forcing Medicare recipients to pay more for prescription drugs and preventive care. It doesn't provide adequate safeguards for Social Security and Medicare. And by saying no to closing egregious tax loopholes, it only increases the pressure to cut programs for seniors and others. Frankly, we've been talking for years here in Washington about the deficit. This budget proposed by my colleagues has a credibility deficit. In fact, has a credibility deficit so that I think most of the observers and commentators are looking and saying, well, that's impossible. No one's going to believe that you can repeal the Affordable Care Act but keep the savings. No one's going to believe you can do all these things and still continue to keep a straight face. So the credibility of the budget is, I think, highly questionable. We should have engaged in a balanced approach to growing our economy and our fiscal responsibility. And that balanced approach requires not only making wise reductions in spending, but also it requires raising revenues. That's the way most government entities operate. Mayors and governors, they have to do it, and they do it. But here, we're avoiding very difficult, tough choices. And it's obvious there are things that have to be done. They can't be wished away. Look at our crumbling infrastructure. As you drive around Rhode Island in the Northeast after a series of storms, it's the worst highway situation I think I recall in perhaps my lifetime, but at least a long time. Potholes and disruptions all over our roads. Americans expect that they'll be fixed, but you can't fix it simply by wishing. You have to have the resources and the investment to make those corrections. So as we go forward, it is important to go ahead and deal with all of these issues in a balanced way, not through creative accounting techniques, but by difficult choices. Programs that aren't working should be cut back. Revenue should be provided for investment in this country, and that's what I think we should and we must do. I've been particularly active with my colleague, Senator McCain, on the Armed Services Committee because the Defense Department is facing serious financial challenges. All of our service sectors are warned that if sequestration remains in place, if the if the Budget Control Act remains in place, together they will not provide the resources necessary to adequately fund the readiness, the modernization of our forces, and the welfare of our forces. Admiral Gortney, for example, who's the commander of NORTHCOM, has made this point along with everyone else. But he also went further to make the point that I think is critical when we talk about defense and non-defense spending. You cannot draw this bright line between the Department of Defense and everybody else in terms of our national security. NORTHCOM, which is responsible for our security in the United States, depends upon border control agents at our border. They depend upon the Department of Homeland Security. If that agency is not adequately funded, if they're suffering through sequestration and through the BCA levels, then we will not have the kind of national security we need. If it translates to further cuts in TSA agents at our airports, that will undermine our security. So this notion that we can draw a nice, neat line between the Department of Defense and give them some more money through different techniques, but ignore the other side of the equation, it doesn't work. One of the most significant examples comes from General John Kelly of Southern Command. They have the capability of, through satellite imagery, through other intelligence means, to identify these fast boats coming out of South America that have drugs, that might have human cargo, terrorists possibly. Knowing where they are and where they're headed is fine, but unless you have Coast Guard cutters to intercept them, you will not interdict this traffic. And as a result, what you will have is a hole in our national security. And the Coast Guard cutters come from the Department of Homeland Security. So, Mr. President, I know there's been an effort to use the Overseas Contingency Fund. Senator Graham, in particular, has been very, very aggressive with that. But I'll try to explain later, if not now, there are limitations. This fund is directed at our operations against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban under the authorization for use of military force. To try to stretch this to build facilities in Alaska for missile defense, it's quite a stretch. That's not what OCO was designed for. And it's become just, I think, a valiant effort to put more money in. But the reality is we have to face up, as Senator McCain and I suggested in our letter to the Budget Committee, and raise the baseline number for the Department of Defense to a total, at least to a total, that avoids the sequestration or beyond. That's a realistic way to do it, and we have to pay for it. And the cuts, I don't think, should come out of non-defense to fund defense. This is an issue, again, are you going to shortchange Homeland Security? Are you going to shortchange other agencies that are critical to the defense of the United States? Or are you going to shortchange the people of the United States? I don't think we should. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.